Okay, so we're here with Alex Massa of Initech, but you're now Appraisal MC. Tell us about that. Tell us what you've done recently with your firm.
Yeah, so I've taken on a new role. I'm running the Initech team and market president, but shifted operational responsibilities to Robert Crow, who's been my right hand for a long time, and taking over responsibilities of Appraisal MC, from CEO down, compliance issues. One is an appraisal management company and one is an actual appraisal company. So they're very symbiotic. So
if it's okay with you, Millie, I was going to ask him the first question that I just have on my mind. So I got a call. In fact, it's the one I texted you about, Alex. I got a call from a realtor, just kind of a 911, Jennifer. Oh my God, can you advise me? The client is with a big firm, too big to name.
Yeah.
And they got the appraisal and the selling it's 10,000 apart. So it's like a 270.
Yeah, more than that, I think.
Like a 280 price point. Okay. So the appraisal came in 10,000 lower. So of course the listing agent, is a bully. We're not coming down. The buyer's not coming up. So everyone's at a standstill. So anyway, they go, I just found out this morning, I said, well, I advised her, I said, here's how you do the reconsideration of value process.
Right.
I don't know how this big bank is going to take it because, I'm not them, right? I know what we would do. So they finally got a hold of someone and they said the rebuttal process with the new comps that they want them to consider is going to take 10 days.
Wow.
10 days. But tell us about, let's talk about reconsideration of value, and that'll just kind of start off maybe some other questions from people on the call.
Sure. So if an appraisal comes in low, there is a rebuttal process, and conventional loans are very different than FHA loans. We'll start with FHA. FHA loans, the underwriter's got to approve whatever the ROV is. So whatever's turned in from listing agent or buyer's agent to review, underwriter's got to approve it before it's sent over to the appraiser. So what the process is, the appraiser's going to turn in his report. Value comes in below negotiated sales price. You can supply additional information to see if there's more, more room for a reconsideration. So a few things that I always recommend, and I've had a few classes with you, it's the 3 R's, it's read, review, and rebuttal, right? And my suggestion to any agent is, first and foremost, read the report. The appraisers spend a lot of time putting these reports together. And what you're looking for is any mistake in the report that could materially affect the value. I'll give you an example of a report I reviewed 3 or 4 years ago. I saw a picture of a pool in this appraisal report. It was not one of our appraisers. It was just a review that I was doing. But the appraiser failed to mention the pool in the report. So
that's a big.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big error, and that's just an example of something that's missed in the report that could materially affect the value. So yeah, we made the recommendation to have the appraiser correct that, and he did, and it made value. So one little error like that is sometimes can fix it. The next process is you've got to determine whether or not the sales utilized within the report are the best sales available. If you think you've got better sales than the ones that are in the report, then supply them, and supply a quick, just factual message why you think these sales are better than the ones in the report, and then let the appraiser analyze and discuss further whether or not they're going to be acceptable or not.
So I have a quick question about that because this comes up all the time. What about, like, let's say the appraisal was done on April 10th and I'm a listing agent or a buying agent, whatever, and I say, oh no, today's April 20th and yesterday there was a sale that closed and it proves our value. So tell us about that.
So unfortunately, the appraisal effective date, which is basically the date that the appraiser inspects the property, is the date of the appraisal. No sales can be considered after the effective date of the appraisal. So unfortunately, there's nothing you could do as a lender to utilize sales that happened after the effective date. Now, I'm going to throw a little curveball here because you can go to another lender if it's a conventional loan and start the process all over again. And it's considered a new transaction at that point. A new appraisal will be ordered, and that appraiser will have availability to use
Availability.
that. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
you and I know already FHA appraisal
Can't
stays
do
with
that.
property 120 days. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to repeat that. We do have several people that popped on. And by the way, for those people that popped on, we are going to, if you have questions, just put them in chat and I can manage the questions that way. Yeah, that some agents don't know that. And so on an FHA, the appraisal stays with the property. There's a code identifier called a case number that FHA provides. And so the appraisal has that code number on it. So like we just got a contract the other day and just through accident, no one told us, but we found out because we went to pull the case number and it said this property already has a case number. Right. So we had to call the other lender, get them to release the appraisal. It met value, thank God. It was, you know, it was fine. But especially when you're negotiating, like if your client is getting an FHA appraisal or if your listing has an FHA appraisal, it is really, really benefits the buyer or the seller to just go ahead and negotiate and come down, because that appraisal is going to stick with the property for 4 months. Like any FHA buyer that comes along has to use that appraisal. So you know, if they put their foot down and say, no, we're not coming down on the price. Well, what happens is they're only limiting themselves to conventional buyers in the future, which you and I both know in the 250 or 300 and below price range. That's like 50% of the buyers, right? Right there is FHA.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting concept, but cool. Well, any other, I mean, I've always got questions waiting in the wings, but I want to see if anyone else, if anyone has a question, just chat. I do have one, I think. So Alex, what is the best way to figure out value? I mean, I know it's really, truly, your answer is not price per square foot, but you and I both know that that's how sellers and agents, that's how they do it. That's just the best thing that they know how to do.
Right.
Why don't you talk about that?
So, you know, this is the hardest part about being a realtor. You wear so many hats. You're quarterback for the whole transaction. You have to also price the property, which means you're putting your appraiser hat on. And unfortunately, it's not an easy thing to do. Price per square foot method is not accurate, and many reasons for that. You've got so many variables in the property, different quality, different lot sizes that can change the price per square foot. So my suggestion, you know, the easy answer to this, Jennifer, is an appraiser's responsibility is to use the sales that are physically and locationally the most similar. Appraisers usually go back within the 12-month period. We try and stay within 6 months when we can. But what you should do is look for all the sales within your neighborhood in a 12-month period and select 3 or 4 that are the most similar to the property. Then start comparing what differences or similarities they have, just to try and get a gauge of a range. You know, appraising is not an exact science. It's subjective in some instances, and you just need good data. That's all.
So Alex, if I'm looking, what are the top, maybe in order, top 4 characteristics of when I'm picking something that's similar? I mean,
sure.
You know, is location the very first most important, or
number one? Yeah,
square footage, or what?
Yeah, you took the word out of my mouth. Location's number one most important thing.
Okay, so location, then what's after that?
It depends on market area. You know, if you're in the loop, probably land is number 2. If you're in the suburbs, square footage is number 2, but land, square footage, and then quality and condition of construction, right? You're looking for similarities in type of finishes to the subject property compared to the comparable. So I would say it's location, land, square footage, and then quality condition.
Okay, got it. And by the way, for those of you that popped on, just if you have a question, just chat in the chat button. So I have a question about, I had a call recently, and this past client of mine wants to buy the lot next to him in Bel Air. I texted you about that one too.
You did, yeah.
Text you all the time. So I told him, and I want to make sure I was right, I think I was, that I said, look, you don't want to merge this lot next to you in Bel Air with your property, because in the future, when you go to sell your house, this lot that's a double-sized lot, and there's no other double-sized lots in Bel Air, you have like this diminished utility. Like, it's good for you while you're enjoying it and you don't have a neighbor next to you, but when you have a future buyer, they're not going to have this, you're not going to be able to recoup your cost in a sales price because of this big, huge, oversized lot. Is that right? And why yes or why no?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million variables here. There are probably scenarios, Jennifer, where if you combine two lots, you can probably get the value out of it. Now, the scenario that you're telling me, they own the house and the lot already, and they just want to buy the lot next to them, probably
Yeah.
or pool or
barbecue. Yeah, they just don't want someone to build next to them is what they want.
Yeah, in that instance, every market's different, but in that instance, you're not utilizing both lots for the main dwelling. So it's really just excess surplus land. And it's probably highest and best use to be sold and something new built on it. So it's one of the questions appraisers ask themselves first thing when they get an assignment is, what is the highest and best use? And in that scenario, the highest and best use would be to separate the lots and sell the empty lot to someone else for construction, especially in that location.
So I know that a lot of realtors are starting to ask me about COVID and values, and can you just start talking about that? And I'm sure that's going to generate questions. Like, what are you seeing so far? What are you not seeing? That's like the huge topic.
So, my saying that I'm really, really good at predicting the past, right?
That's right. You're an expert at it.
That's all I do. I've got theories. I don't think the COVID thing is going to really affect us too much value-wise in real estate in Houston. I think the effects of COVID and the effects of oil and gas are going to hurt us in certain market areas. So my prediction is we're going to see a slowdown in the market just while people figure out how to work in this new environment. Realtors, I tip my hat off to them. They're figuring out ways to show homes virtually. They're making things happen. So kudos to them for keeping the ball rolling. Without them, we would be out of work. And, there's still buyers out there. They just have to find a different way to show these homes. I don't know what you're seeing, but every realtor that I've talked to has buyers that are just kind of waiting on the sidelines. They want to know what's going to happen. They're nervous. Are prices going to come down? Should they wait until they do and then jump on it? I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know what the right time is. If it's the right time for you, it's the right time for you. But we've got low rates. We've got low inventory. I think it's time to move if you need to.
So what I personally have seen, because as you know, I've got clients in all areas of Houston and all kinds of price ranges. Anything below like 280 to 300, we are still seeing multiple offers. Like I'm swamped right now. Like I'm busy with buyers. Like forget refis. I mean, I'm getting to them when I can and doing what I can if it makes sense for them. But the purchases they're keeping me super busy. I have not seen a slowdown in buyers at all.
That's great.
What are you seeing on your orders? Like, are you seeing one price range dominate as far as the orders that are coming in and the numbers that you guys have?
I feel like we've experienced that for a couple of years now where, the higher price points are just a little bit slower. And I know many lenders are now dealing with challenges doing jumbo loans, and it's a little bit more difficult to get jumbo loans for the majority of lenders out there.
Yeah. Are you seeing a slowdown in that? Like, because y'all get orders from all price ranges. Are you seeing a lot of jumbo orders?
No, we're not seeing a lot of jumbo orders. But you know what's funny? What I am seeing a lot of, especially in Houston, is a lot of the new construction high dollar properties in Tanglewood, River Oaks. Those builders, I think they've lived through this before, and they're dropping their prices to a point that they're almost, for the market, giving it away. And those are moving with cash buyers, all sorts of different transactions in that price point in the 3 to 5 million. I've seen some movement. And then what you're seeing, I'm seeing as well. You know, under 300 has not slowed down.
I mean, I've had several clients that have asked me and they're like, well, should I wait to buy because prices are going to come down? I'm like, look, you're in the 250 price range. No, because I'm seeing that market is not going to recede. I see that there's just a plethora of buyers, and I think there might be less inventory, which will make it even more of a seller's market, because I think there are people that are laid off or furloughed, and they're saying, well, we're just going to stay put. We don't have a job to get a new house, so we're going to stay in our house. We're not going to sell it. So that creates less of a supply. The buyers aren't slowing down. There's still a ton of first-time buyers that, honestly, there's still buyers I'm seeing that were put on hold after Harvey and experienced like credit issues. And Harvey's what, like 2 years? It was 2 years ago, right? Was it
17? Yeah, almost.
So honestly, I mean,
yeah,
we're seeing people that had to rent after Harvey that maybe were planning to buy a house, and then they're like, well, my credit's shot now. It really does take 12 to 36 months for people that have huge credit events to get their credit back online. So now they're finally back online with credit after Harvey, and they're ready to buy. They're like, we are sick of renting.
Yeah.
We want to buy a house, and I hate my landlord, and I hate this apartment complex, or, you know, I want to paint the walls green, or whatever the reason. And they are applying. So I haven't seen the slowdown yet. So I've been curious, because I've been getting a lot of questions, of course, of people. In fact, I got one the other day, and I think I answered it right, but she said, you know, are appraisers going to use values post-COVID and pre-COVID? Like, are you going to make any kind of determination in your comments on your appraisal one way or the other because of COVID, or no?
You know, once we start seeing a market reaction due to whatever market shifts there are, we'll start making adjustments. So for example, if you're in Katy and you live in a neighborhood, let's say Cinco Ranch, and the median price point's 300, and then you start seeing the median price point dip below 290, 280, then we're seeing a market shift, right? And once appraisers see a market shift and we see some closed sales that are below prior sales, then we see what's called a declining market. In that instance, then we'll start making adjustments for what the market's actually doing. Now, we're not going to make any predictions or assumptions on what's going to happen in the future, because all we're going to do is, hey, this is my effective date, and this is what's happened in the past few months, and this is how I'm going to report it. We're not allowed to make assumptions on future changes, but you start seeing changes, and it's been a while since we've seen declining markets. Once we start seeing those changes, we'll start making adjustments. You know, I'm going to rewind to a few things you said, and you said inventory is low, and that's true. I just heard HAR's output on this year's around this time compared to last year around this time, and there's about a 30% smaller inventory, or shortage of inventory. So I think that's going to keep prices kind of in line. I think low rates are going to keep prices in line. We'll just see. You know, it just depends on what oil and gas is going to do, how that's going to affect our local economy.
Yeah, I know. I do have a question from someone that popped on after we talked about reconsideration of value, so I want to revisit that topic.
Okay.
The question is, what is the best way to protest an appraisal? Had one that came in under, the appraiser had comps that were 12-month range, like 12 months back, I'm assuming. I sent in competing comps in the same range. They would not accept them since they were older than 90 days, even though the appraisers were older than 90 days. It's like they used older than 90-day comps, but they wouldn't let the rebuttal consider 90-day comps, which does not seem fair.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fair. I don't know the particulars of that transaction, but you should be able to provide sales. I'm going to rewind and say, look, as long as you've got sales that are better than the ones within the report and they fall within the time frame that's allowable, you should be able to submit them, and then the appraiser should comment on why they did or did not use them, right? Did they feel like their sales were more similar, and why? Were the sales that were provided in a different market area? Were they older sales? Did the appraiser have more recent sales that proved a more different value? What could have happened there is, yes, there could have been sales within the 12-month range, but there may have been 2 sales that sold a month ago, and the appraiser may have given those 2 sales the most weight. So what we do when we're putting together an appraisal report and we've got several comps put together, we don't take an average of the after adjusted value. We weight them based on how similar they are to the subject property, how recent they are. And I think now with everything that's going on, the more recent sales are going to carry more weight. So that's what could have possibly happened.
So she just typed me again and said that this appraisal company would not respond to their protest. Like, I guess they submitted for reconsideration and then they were like, we're just not answering, like crickets.
I think everyone should have the opportunity to rebuttal. Running an appraisal management company, unless it's an FHA appraisal and underwriter does not give approval, we're going to forward a rebuttal on all reports as long as it's factual information, whether we agree with it or not.
So I have a question, because not every appraiser or not every lender is like you and me. Like, I know that we're very welcome to the appraisal process, to the rebuttal process, and I go overboard to make sure that everyone's communicating, give us comps, let me get them to, I'll get them to y'all. Y'all are, you, for those of you that don't know, Alex runs our appraisal management company. So y'all do a great job of being the mediator, which is what we want to comply with HVCC. So I know you and I are friendly to the rebuttal process, but let's be real, okay? There are some lenders that, like we talked about in the beginning, Wells Fargo, they take 10 freaking days. And you and I both know, Wells Fargo, they are not, I can just tell right now, we don't know how that's gonna come out, right? It's gonna take 10 days for them to come back and say, forget it.
Yeah.
So what if your buyer or your whoever is with a bad egg lender or a bad egg choice of an appraisal, and you're trying to get this deal sold and they won't even respond to the rebuttal? Like, what are your choices? What do you do?
This is a great lead-in question, because my first response is call you. You're not going to even pop up on their radar. And that's unfortunate. This business is built on relationships and customer service, and the big banks just do not provide that. So your best option is start all over and start local. Start with someone that knows the market. The beauty that we have in our relationship is not only do we run your AMC for Legacy Mutual, which is based out of San Antonio, but in many, many states, but the AMC is local to Houston. So many times I've popped in and helped the loan officers in Houston and reviewed appraisals and suggested comps myself. So you kind of have an upper hand compared to some of the bigger banks. It's a process, and it's as good as how much people care. And you care, we care. We just want to move things along and treat everyone with respect and just provide good customer service. So
yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, I appreciate it. I do get some questions from realtors that, we've had appraisals that have come in low. It's just a fact of life, and we've submitted a rebuttal and the rebuttal didn't work. Sometimes it does, they missed a bathroom, or just like you talked in the beginning, but sometimes the comps you know, y'all stand on, hey, this is why we valued it that. You always give an explanation as to why you didn't consider those comps or won't consider them. I always get asked this question. The agent will ask me, well, can we order another appraisal? Because I still believe firm in my value. And my answer is that unfortunately, we cannot. It is definitely against HVCC for us to keep ordering an appraisal just because we don't like the answer. So
that's, yeah,
you know, so and you know, we go to great lengths to make sure that we have valued and valuable appraisers on our list. Not that anyone is perfect, but if we get a bad appraisal, I can tell you that appraiser, I'm calling Alex, and I've done it before and said, hey, this appraiser, this was not a good appraisal. And I mean, I think, you know, we're like, get them off our list. We do not want them on our rotation. But I don't think I think in 10 years it's happened like one time.
Right.
Because y'all do a good job of vetting that. So again, I'm one company, you're one company. Right. But what I want to encourage the realtors, because you're going to hear this from your clients and they're going to say, why is the appraisal fee $625? Wells Fargo, their appraisal fee is only $400. Well, I'm going to tell you why. So I need y'all to go to bat for us when clients, whether it's me or another local lender that you know is probably using, they're probably using Alex anyway. A ton of people use them here in Houston. The reason that appraisal management fee is so important, because so the appraisal is probably about $450, right? It's like $450, $500. There is a fee tacked onto it for the appraisal management fee. So it's about $500 for the appraisal and $125 for the appraisal management fee. The reason that's so important is, just as y'all are hearing in this very good example, the integrity of the appraisal, and appraisal can screw your deal in a heartbeat. So just with my realtor friend that called me yesterday about the one where Wells Fargo rebuttal is going to take 10 days. I mean, really 10 days? Like, making sure that that appraisal is in order and with a good company and a good process is so, so important. So when y'all see and hear from the buyers, like, why it's $625, it's to make sure that we have the very best list, the very best process, because it costs everybody time and money later on when you have to switch lenders and pay for now a second appraisal. That's another $600. Okay, right? So on and on and on the reality goes, but I wanted to let y'all know, in case you didn't know, those that are listening, that's what appraisal management fees are for. For some companies, not all companies use them. But what happens with Wells, for example, Wells Fargo is the company. I didn't mean to name names, but the bank that had it in this point, their fee that they charge the borrowers, I think like $450. They use an appraisal management company, which is probably getting $100 to $150, which means they have less money available. So they're really only paying that appraiser $250 to $300 to do the work that's really $450 to $500 in the market, which means they're getting paid less, probably based on volume, probably because they're a bottom of the barrel appraiser and they will work for $250, which is nothing with all the work that y'all put in these appraisals is ginormous. Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the additional fee, and the reason that we tack on the appraisal management fee to the client, is because we want to pay the appraisers full price, because we want them to take our orders seriously, and we want them to be like, hey, I'm getting full price for this appraisal. I'm going to give full work and full effort. But if I'm an appraiser that's only getting $250 because I'm on Wells rotation and they do a gazillion loans, or B of A or whoever, and I'm just based on volume, I know they're never going to fire me because they're just too busy to even think about it. So I'm just going to keep on that rotation and just keep collecting my $250, but I'm going to give less effort to the $250 appraisal than the $500 appraisal I'm being paid over here. I mean, y'all, that's human nature. Like, am I right, Alex, or am I totally off keel here?
No, I mean, it's 100% right. And the fact that they're taking 10 days to do a rebuttal is just crazy. We give our appraisers 3 business days, and on average, they're doing it within 2 business days, right? They're taking the time to really respond and look at what is sent. And whenever they get an order, whenever an appraiser gets an order from our management company, we're put at the top of the list. You know, it's just human nature. You either get paid full price, which is somewhere between, you know, $400 to $500 for an appraisal. You're going to do a better job and put that at the top of the list compared to someone that's paying you $200 to $300. So yeah, I mean,
so I do have another question, a really good one actually, that this realtor's client thinks that the appraiser works for the lender. So can you just explain the relationship between an appraiser and a lender? Can you just kind of educate on how that works to give the realtor some talking points for their clients?
Yeah, so appraisers are completely independent. There's two ways appraisals can be ordered. One is where a mortgage bank has a separate division that orders appraisals that has nothing to do with production. So basically what they're trying to do is keep the loan officer and the appraiser completely independent. The second way to work is how we work is through an AMC. Someone hires a third-party independent management company, and the AMC selects the appraiser based on proximity, location, you know, knowledge of the area.
So AMC means appraisal management company, right?
Appraisal management company.
Okay.
Right. So there are not any appraisers that directly work for lenders. Now, there are appraisal management companies that are owned by lenders, and in those instances, you know, things could get a little gray. It's allowed, but it shouldn't be. Wells Fargo for years owned their AMC. They got so big that they had to spread it out, but they would have their own staff appraisers working for their AMC. So they would charge an AMC fee, they would charge an appraiser fee, and they owned the company, which was just crazy to me. But no, there's some separation. So
just a quick education for those that might not have been in the business at that time. Alex, the year of HVCC was, that was after 2008, right? That was Dodd-Frank?
2009, HVCC came out. And
okay.
Yeah, I mean, but before that, you and I worked together before that.
Yeah. So HVCC is the Home Valuation Code of Conduct. And after the big bubble of financial markets crashing in 2008, what happened was they realized, and I actually like HVCC a lot because I think it really brought some accountability definitely to the structure. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, back in the old days, back in 2005, Alex, I was texting you and like,
yeah.
And I was saying, hey, I was picking Alex as my appraiser as much as possible because I know that the integrity of your work. I mean, you've never done or will do me any favors that shouldn't be validly there. Like I've never asked you and you've never done anything for me unethical, but let's be real. Your turn time and your service was always the best. So I was always choosing you, which really probably is unfair when you look at it, because I didn't give, you know, I need to round robin, right? So HVCC came out and said, hey, if anyone is directly involved in benefiting from the transaction, so 100% commission loan officer, which I am, I'm a sales girl, I'm going to benefit from this closing, that I cannot have anything to do with the ordering. I can't contact you. I can't contact you until after I know that the appraisal's done. Because when I order it, so the sales team has to order the appraisal through kind of a blind method. It's like a blind rotation. So my company manages a list. Well, actually, that's what the appraisal management company, your company, does for us, is we put the address through the portal and it is randomly assigned. I guess y'all do it by what, like computer?
Yeah, I mean, we've got our systems. We've got to make sure appraisers are approved with the investors. We've got to make sure that they've got the right licensing and current. And then we look for appraisers that are in the area that can meet the turn time.
Zip code. So based on, let's say I'm in a 77077. So Alex, I trust, because we're having our clients pay the fee, but we're trusting that we already know that Alex is doing the diligence for us. And when we put a 077 appraisal in the queue, that 4 or 5 appraisers that we've already approved and he's approved in the rotation are going to come up. And so then it's randomly assigned. So it'll get to XYZ company, and we're not allowed to know who the appraiser is until the appraisal's been done. And the reason that is because if I find out it's Alex, you know, you betcha I would be calling him like, Alex, yeah, just to say, hey, what's up? When's the appraisal going to be here? Whatever. So we have to communicate through this wall. Like, let's say that y'all, I had one yesterday where the agent said, hey, I haven't received a call from an appraiser. And I said, hi, I ordered it a week ago. Let me see what's going on. So my processor went to the portal and they communicated with y'all and said, hey, appraisal on this. And so y'all reach out to the appraiser for us. So we're not calling them because we don't know who they are. And then y'all very quickly, y'all are awesome. You respond super quick. You responded back, blah, blah, blah. They're going out at this time, blah, blah, blah. You know, like whatever communication goes through this arm's length process.
Right.
And so we have to always maintain that. And that really is a good thing. I mean, sometimes it's a pain, but it really is good because in the old days, there were some bad apples that's how a lot of the fraud happened. Is that like, hey, Alex, give me this value, blah, 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 right? And that's how all this fraudulent stuff, not you, but you know, there's bad apples that did. And that's why this wall or barrier was created. So we've been talking about it a long time, I know, but I think it's important for realtors to understand what we go through and why we go through it. And I actually do. I like HVCC. I think it just creates, like I said, that accountability and that proper professional channel to make sure that everyone is treated fairly.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, the rules now protect the borrower and the bank, right? And if you're representing the borrower, you want to protect them. If you're representing the bank, you want to protect them. But you're so right. You know, prior to '08, it was the Wild West. And
oh yeah. We were just trying to get our deals done. And I'd be like, hey, Alex, can you turn one in 5 days? And will you charge me, you know, whatever for it? And you're like, yeah, sure.
You were one of the nice ones, right? You know, we had clients call us, if you can't get this value, we'll never send you an appraisal again. And we had to fire clients because of it. But that's part of what caused the problem, the financial crisis. And this did level out the playing field and made it a lot more smooth, a lot more professional, like you said. And fair. You know, at the end of the day, we don't want that to happen again. It really, you know, handicapped our industry for many years. And I think now we're well prepared to do it fairly, to basically serve the borrower, serve the bank in the manner that we're supposed to.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just want to remind y'all, if anyone has a question, just put it in the chat. And I always have a ton of questions on waiting in my head if no one's asking. I do have one actually. So what do y'all have to adhere to when you're doing adjustments? Like, let's say when we talked earlier about, okay, you pick location. So I've got my 5 or 6 comps that based on location, square footage, you know, room count. I've got these 5 comps that are similar. So then you go, and I know that you do adjustments, like this one has a pool, this one doesn't, this has a 2-car garage, this one has a carport. So you're doing those pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that a garage is worth 10 grand? Or like, how do you determine that? What are the ethics? Because one appraiser might say 7,000 and another might say 10. Like, how do you know?
So I'm going to simplify it as much as possible. What we do as real estate professionals, appraisers and realtors, is we measure what the market's willing to pay, okay? So I'll give you an example. If you have 2 identical homes where one that has a 2-car garage sold for $220 and one that did not have a garage sold for $200, what is a garage worth in that market? It's worth
$20,000.
$20,000. So in that market, a buyer is willing to pay $20,000 for a home that has a 2-car garage. Now, if you go and talk to any builder and ask them how much does it cost to build a 2-car garage, they're going to tell you 30 to 40 grand. Well, if it costs 30 to 40 grand, why isn't it worth it? And this all goes back to what we're doing is we're measuring the buyer's reaction. That's how adjustments are made. We're trying to prove in the market that a buyer is willing to pay this amount for this feature. And this is how we proved it. We found a couple sales, one that had it, one that didn't. and buyers in this market are paying this much for this feature. So it's all a measurement of buyer's reaction. It's not a measurement of cost at all. You know, it's unfortunate that HGTV came out and tells us that if you put 200 grand into a house, it's worth 300 grand more. Well, sometimes you put 200 grand into a house and it's worth only 100 grand more. So
yeah, over improving for sure.
Exactly.
So okay, let's talk about that for a second. Since no one else is asking questions, y'all, I'm gonna ask all the questions.
Yeah.
So let's talk about over improving. So I'll have, well, especially this happens a lot on refis. I hear this, right? On values, and they'll say, well, I'm like, hey, have you done any improvements? You know, blah, 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 since you bought. Oh yes, I've put on a new roof and I have a new AC and like all these items, and I'm just sitting there silently keeping my calm because I know, and they don't, that these are just annual or
they're maintenance
decade maintenance items that don't add value. They're just continuing the value, right? So what kind of things when you're doing an appraisal would cause you to up the value in a positive way? For what kind of improvements do you usually see that like make a difference?
Look, it really all depends on the market area. You can have market areas where the typical home has Formica countertops, right? And vinyl flooring. And you upgrade your house and put in some marble or quartz flooring and some hardwood flooring and tile, which is now an upgrade compared to Formica and vinyl. If the market reacts in a way to give value to those upgrades, then then you can measure it. There are instances where you put upgrades in a house and the market just doesn't react to it, or it doesn't react as much as the cost. One big example of that is a pool. You know, you put in a $80,000 pool in the house, and the day it's put in, it's worth 20, maybe. So it's all a measurement of what that particular market is doing. When you ask me what features are most common, if you tackle flooring, kitchen, and baths that are dated first, I think you're going to get the most bang for the buck.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kitchen, bath, and flooring. So that I have a question then, because I just got one on the chat. Should I improve the ugly flooring or not if I want to move within 4 years?
That's a tough question. It just depends on what kind of flooring you're going to do and how much enjoyment you're going to get out of it. But it's something that we could analyze just to see how much it's going to impact the value. So they should reach out to me directly.
I wonder if buyers really, if they like the house, and this could be a question that any realtor you could chime in on the chat and answer it for me, but do y'all think that buyers, when they see a house, and let's say the paint is really good and the colors, fit, they're like jazzing with the colors, like, ooh, I like these gray walls, and like they like everything about the house, would they not buy the house just because the floors are not amazing or whatever? Like that's the only, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if it would take away from the value, or if they would say, oh, I'm going to pay 10,000 less because these floors are just, I don't like them. Right? Like, I wonder. So that kind of answers your question, Michelle, maybe or maybe not. I don't know. Here's another question. What about a house and a guest house? Is it considered 2 homes in 1 lot, or how can the appraisal be done in this case?
Okay, so there are obviously some guidelines that lenders have. You can have a single family property with an accessory unit, which is basically a quarters or garage apartment, and that can be treated as a single family property. Now, when you've got 2 properties or 2 homes on a lot that are very similar in size, they've got 2 separate meters for utilities, they've got 2 separate addresses, that's what we call a multifamily property. That would fall under a duplex in the highest and best use. of a multifamily property is for investment purposes. So that's a different type of loan. You can still do a loan on that. Jen, I'll let you tackle that, but there are differences in loan types when you do single family compared to multifamily investment properties, correct?
Yeah, when you've got the two clearly different units that are, you know, different metered, and like you said, it's clearly a two duplex type property, we require more down. There's more down payment. It depends if, are you going to live in one of the units and use the other one as investment? You'll get a little bit better terms and rate. But yeah, it does become a little more complicated at that point. Yeah. But we see plenty, you know, back to her question, we see plenty of houses with quarters.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, it's very
and they're appraised that way. There just have to be houses like it in your market area. The issue is when you're the white elephant in an area. Am I right, Alex? It's like you're the only one, like the standalone, and it's really hard to give value at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to prove what the value is in the market, and if you don't have anything to prove it, it's hard to prove any value, right? You know, you could have an area where everyone in the neighborhood has a 2-car garage, and all of a sudden there's one house that has an 8-car garage. And the typical buyer is not typing in an HAR, I want a house that's 2,000 square feet with an 8-car garage. So there's some diminished value there. Yeah. I'm sure there is some value, but the typical buyer is not looking for that. So what is the typical buyer really going to pay for that?
Yeah, that was one of the upgrades that maybe we alluded to before, is that you've got, like when we talked earlier in the call about the big lot, like, oh, you've got a double lot. Well, guess what? You're the only one in the 20 square miles that's got, like, it's great for that homeowner, but I mean, it's not going to add a ton of value. So, or like the 8-car garage, right? It's just a needle in a haystack, and you would value it a little bit more, but it would really be the same as like a 2 or 4-car garage or whatever's normal in the area. You'd put a little uptick for that, wouldn't you? For the garage.
100%. I mean, we're able to make some subjective adjustments based on, you know, market knowledge, but you know,
not the full value of the cost, I'm sure. Kind of like the pool. It's 80 grand and you get 20 grand out of it. Kind of like that.
Probably very similar. Yeah.
I do have another question, because we are going to wrap up just kind of right at 2, just for everybody's time. And I will send out this recording, by the way, to everybody. It'll come out tomorrow because we have to convert it and all that. Will the HOA determine ability to increase value? Some HOAs don't allow renting, for example. Will this be measured as more rooms to the home? Or let me see, some HOAs don't allow renting.
So yeah, like we were talking, I hate texting. So like HOA sometimes doesn't allow you to rent out that additional space that you created, like over the garage, because I see a lot of homes like that.
Oh yeah.
Now would the HOA determine the value because it can't be rented out basis it can be rented out? Will that restriction determine if the appraiser increases the value or keeps it as just a 2-bedroom addition to the house?
You know, this is very similar to school district adjustments, and the market's going to reflect whatever the adjustment's going to be for that feature in that neighborhood. I'll give you kind of a symbiotic analogy. So if you're in a good school district, for example, people say, well, we're in a good school district, so we should be valued more. Well, yes, but we can't technically make an adjustment for the school district, but the comps that we select are most likely going to be in that school district. If they're not, then they're either going to be higher or they're going to be lower, and the location adjustment is going to be made. So in this example, you know, the market, whatever the market's willing to pay for a house with a garage apartment in that market area, that neighborhood with those restrictions, that's what the market is. So the HOA is limiting the use of it, but the market's going to determine the value of it.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Because Alex, in this case, and that was a good question, Jonna, you guys don't sit there and read HOA bylaws and guidelines, so you probably wouldn't know, right? to answer a question. Like if they restrict it or not, you're going to go by what the activity you see per MLS. Like you'll be able to tell if there's activity.
Yeah, 99% of the time you were correct. Sometimes we do read the deed restrictions. We run across properties that have been modified or they've converted a garage, and a lot of times we want to check, is that even legally permissible? That's something
we have to be, one thing, and this gets into something that's really a lot deeper, because when someone is buying, like I'll just think of in the Heights, okay? If they're buying cute little bungalow house and someone's built a garage over the garage apartment in it, I mean, yes, essentially you could rent it out, but you really don't want to share, like propose it to us that way. We're just going to be like, hey, it's quarters for like people to visit and, be when your family or whatever. Because if we then say, oh yeah, well, I'm going to rent it out. Well, then it becomes for us a 2-unit property. So it's like, oh, okay, well, we're going to price this as a duplex. A duplex doesn't have to mean that it's like the old brownstone vision of like, you're thinking, oh yeah, it's like a Boston or a New York, brownstone that's got side by side. But that's not always what a 2-unit property is. It means that there's 2 units. Like if you're going to be using these other units on the property for renting out, then we're going to turn it into a totally different animal for pricing and consideration of down payment, interest rate, and all that kind of stuff. So it opens up like a big can of worms. So usually when we see that stuff, people will usually, buy it, and like it has a garage apartment, and what they do with it later is up to them. But we don't usually, in most cases, underwrite it that way. Like, oh, great, it's going to get all this rental income.
Yeah.
Because then it becomes a semi-rental property.
100%. Yeah. I ran through some of the questions on what we ask ourselves to determine whether it's multifamily or single family, and separately metered, separate address. Size is a big determining factor as well. If they're similar in size, then most likely they're going to be used as rental properties.
It gets complicated. I don't know if we sent you this one or if we got that far, but I probably asked you about it last year. But we had a guy buying a place, and it has already been adjusted and built out, for like Airbnb, where it's got like a separate entrance. So like it was a single family large home. Yeah. And it had a little living unit carved into the side of it. And then it had a garage, kind of a space behind it. And, he needed the rental income to qualify. We didn't close it because he ended up not buying that. But it was uber complicated. Like, he wanted the low, he's like, well, why is my rate higher? And why is my down payment higher? I'm like, because it's a 3-unit property. Like we can't say, oh, I'm going to get rental income from these two units to offset my payment and then price it as a single family unit property. So we're starting to see some of those things pop up as people have adjusted their properties for Airbnb and stuff. So we just have to be careful. We have to be careful when, if you are listing a property like that, I would really check with me. Just call me and I'll put you in touch with Alex, or you can call him directly and really see how that's going to be viewed. Because that could really complicate, now that I'm thinking about it, that could really complicate underwriting maybe. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to ask yourself or know that an appraiser is going to go into that house and you can't hide 3 kitchens, right? And there's no single family property that needs 3 kitchens. So you just got to be careful.
Yeah, you do. So what are this kind of as some parting thoughts? Like if there was one message that you thought was super important that we haven't covered or need to cover again for the realtors that are dialed on. The ones that are dialed on, they represent all price ranges and all parts of the city. So what do we need to know?
Yeah, so the future is what it's going to be. We're going to see some challenging times in the next few months, but the good news is we've got low rates, so that's going to push us through. And our industry is counter-cyclical. Whenever the economy is struggling, we're usually, doing very well. So let's hope that pushes us through even with the oil crisis. We didn't talk too much about changes in appraisal process, but when COVID-19 started, Fannie, Freddie, FHA changed a few guidelines. So in some instances, appraisers are allowed to do exterior only and desktop appraisals. However, there's one caveat to it, is that the appraiser needs to know what type of condition and quality the house is in, outside and inside. So one recommendation is when you're putting together listings, especially now, because that's a possibility that an appraiser will do a desktop or exterior only, is put as many interior photos of the subject property in the listing and go overboard on your agent remarks. You know, really help us paint a picture of what this property looks like, to the point that I know what I'm looking at, I know what I'm getting without even having to visit a property. Those are just some minor changes that happened recently, and I don't know that everyone's aware of it. It is a small percentage, like I said, of the transactions that we're doing, but it's still something to take into consideration. And
you bring up a good point. In case they're wondering what we're talking about. So usually it's called a property inspection waiver, or a desktop drive-by like you're talking about. They are coming back. Mm-hmm. They had really stopped after Harvey because so many things were flooded, but Fannie Mae is now letting, so if the house that the person is buying has data in the bank of FHA, Fannie, Freddie, it's not happening on FHA appraisals, only conventional, but like if this house data is already uploaded and been through the system of a Fannie Freddie loan, that's where we're getting them. And there's no way that you're going to know that other than when we run it. And it's usually for 20% down, not investment property, not condo, not duplex, like not anything complicated, not a cash out transaction. Like it's just kind of a vanilla purchase, 20% down. That's where we're seeing these property inspection waivers come up. And when we get them, we always ask the buyer with the buyer's agent, because I had two just last week, I had two that came up. So I always ask the buyer before I get the listing agent super excited. I just say, hey, we got a property inspection waiver. Let me tell you what that is and what it isn't. It means you're saving $600 or $625. But what it's not is it's not checking up on the value. It's not, seeing what the value is. So we do give them the choice because, I mean, that's the right thing to do, right? And so in every case, the buyer has chosen to not do it. But what it means is then I contact the listing agent and I say, hey, guess what? Bonus. Your seller doesn't have to worry about anyone coming in their house, and they don't have to worry about anyone checking up on the value because there was enough data in the automated underwriting engine that we have to run all the loans through to spit out that the probable value of that property is fine and not inflated. So that's why it doesn't happen on every property. Like we're probably not going to get it on a property that has been recently updated, like bought. I mean, it's just probably not going to happen because that data is not through the system yet.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, it's pretty cool because we get to save some clients some money. There is a question, and then we'll start to wind it down. She's curious to see what the listing price versus sales price will be in the next few months. In other words, because right now houses are kind of like selling at like 6% below listing price, right? Is that the average, Alex, or do you know?
I don't look at an average of the entire market, but it is a determining factor when we're looking at appraisals in particular market areas, and it really depends. That's a tough question to answer. Historically, I would say, yeah, it's in probably the 5% range. It's going to depend on areas and price points. In higher dollar price points, that percentage I think is going to be higher. And I think in the 300K range and below, it's probably going to be very close to what the list price is. So
the second part of her question was also the value for an upgrade to the seller versus actual value to the buyer appraiser. And she said, yes, buyers get spoiled. Yes, buyers get spoiled. Yes, buyers get spoiled.
So true. Look, the appraiser can only determine what they can determine based on the market data. So there are going to be instances where someone falls in love with a certain amenity that the house has, but if there's no way to value it, then they're going to have to pay up for that amenity. It's just the way it is. We've got very, very strict guidelines. They're not written by appraisers. Funny enough, they're written by Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, and USDA. And they're conservative guidelines because they want to protect the asset that they're insuring. So it makes sense. It's got to be proven, supported, and historic, right? So if you can't prove it, it's not there.
Got it. Well, I really appreciate you being on. We've covered so many topics. Sorry if we jumped around too much, but I was trying to kind of get a lot of topics in there that would interest everybody. So we are recording this. We are gonna pass it around. Alex Massa, CEO of Appraisal MC, prior CEO of Initech Appraisals. God, we've done business with you for over a decade for sure. So y'all's integrity is just top notch, and we love having y'all as a partner. Thank you so much. All right, and if they ever need anything, they can Google you and look you up. Send your message, LinkedIn or whatever.
Yeah, they can email me, alex@appraisalmc.com, and
awesome.
That's probably the easiest way. And thank you, realtors, for continuing to push through and adjusting. We've all had to make big adjustments personally and professionally. And we couldn't do it without you. So thanks for keeping the ball rolling.
Yeah, thank you so much. Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
You too, Jen. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We will talk to you soon, and I'll push this recording out by tomorrow at the latest. So thanks, everyone, for dialing on.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Legacy Mutual Mortgage is an equal housing opportunity lender. The opinions expressed here do not reflect those of Legacy Mutual Mortgage.